Good day, you're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danie, Laurel.
And I'm Delos Santos. Here are today's top stories. A tale of two growth projections. The Asian Development Bank retains its GDP outlook for this year, citing the economy's continued recovery from the pandemic. On the other hand, Moody's Analytics trims its forecast, saying high interest rates and a global slowdown could weigh on growth.
The peso falls to a new all-time low. This time, the currency plunges to the 58 level against the dollar. Economists fear that the peso may dip further as the U.S. Federal Reserve delivers another jumbo rate hike.
President Bongbong Marcos meets with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session in New York. The president is also set to hold a bilateral meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden.
And Filipino freelancers with overseas clients are on the rise. We'll get to know why the gig economy remains strong here in the Philippines despite uncertainties. We begin our broadcast with the Asian Development Bank keeping its growth forecast for the Philippines this year. In its Asian Development Outlook 2022 report, the Manila-based lender says it expects domestic economy to grow by 6.5% this 2022. The ADB says the normalization of activity will usher the country's economy to a steady and pre-pandemic pace of expansion. However, this outlook is at the lower end of the government's 6.5 to 7.5% target for this year. Now, also at the lower end of this forecast is the updated projection from Moody's Analytics. The research firm expects the economy to grow at a slower pace of 6.8% from its original forecast of 7.2% growth. Moody's Analytics says high interest rates and slower global growth are posing challenges to Asia-Pacific economies, the Philippines included. Philippine GDP slowed to 7.4% in the second quarter from 8.2% growth in the January to March period.
The peso sinks to another all-time low for the 8th time this year. The local currency closed at 58 pesos against the US dollar on Wednesday, September 21. This is 52 centavos weaker compared to Tuesday's close. Year-to-date, the peso has weakened by 13.72% from its 51 per dollar close on December 31, 2021. With another interest rate hike from the Federal Reserve, economists fear the peso may sink further. RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort says it's not far-fetched that the peso will dip below 60 against a greenback given the trend in forex trading.
Ang pinakamataas sa kasaysayan, 58. Diyan nagsara ngayon, ngayong araw na to. Ang pinanggalingan natin, 51 na simula ng taon. So umakyat na siya ng 7 piso.
The Bangko Sentral is set to meet this afternoon in what analysts anticipate to result in a move that will prop up the peso. In a Businessworld poll, 11 of 15 analysts expect a rate hike of 50 basis points. Over in the U.S., the Fed goes big with a 75 basis point increase in interest rates, while signaling one more hike of the same size this year.
What we think we need to do and should do is to move our policy rate to a restrictive level that's restrictive enough to bring inflation down to 2%. Where there is a possibility certainly that we would go to a certain level that we're confident in and stay there for a time. But we're not at that level.
It's been said time and again, the peso's weakness is good for overseas Filipinos, but can the same be said for freelancers with overseas clients, especially now that the freelancing economy has seen tremendous growth over the course of the pandemic? Let's get insights from digital commerce platform Payoneer's Regional Vice President for Southeast Asia, Miguel Warren. Miguel, good day. Thank you for joining us. Now, based on your latest report together with GCash, the pandemic really led to an acceleration of freelancing economy here in the Philippines. How much of a growth have we seen over the past 2 years? And should we expect that to be slowing down a bit, especially now that the economy is reopening?
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think we're definitely seeing really great trends in terms of the rise of freelancing in the Philippines. Even pre-pandemic, the Philippines was already one of the top 5 online outsourcing countries in the Philippines, largely, I think, because of our customer service orientation and our English language skills. In many ways, it's kind of mirrored the rise of the BPO industry in the Philippines here, where essentially freelancers are providing online outsourcing services. And we continue to see that growing in the future as freelancers actually start to grow bigger. They're becoming SMEs, they are investing in infrastructure, they're hiring others, and they're ultimately becoming businesses.
Sir, what type of jobs are there today for freelancers? Is it still predominantly, writing? You mentioned English language skills, editing, some teachers even, like myself, I still teach abroad. Give us what other types have the pandemic brought into the form?
Indeed, that's a great question. And traditionally, Filipino freelancers have been well known and in demand for virtual assistant services, customer support services, and writing. But one of the things we're starting to see is kind of a gradual escalation into higher value services. So we're seeing IT and mobile programming. We're also seeing a number of emerging sectors in freelance that are content creators, right? And content creators can be both just writers, but also bloggers, vloggers, and even those that create their own channel on platforms like TikTok and Kumu to basically be able to bring content to a wider audience.
With that being said, are we seeing a more predominantly younger population demographic here for freelancers, or are we also seeing a change in trend? And are we seeing more older people at least, or the older population also dipping their feet into freelancing?
I think it's mixed. So freelancing is very diverse, and it really is starting to evolve. Used to be that many freelancers were just considered for kind of lower value services, but now the spectrum has really increased, where even those with high value skills, very specialist skills, are being called upon by global companies to provide services on demand. And as the pandemic has really accelerated digitization, it's also changed the mindset of many global companies who are now much more open to a distributed, remote, and global workforce. And I think that's a positive trend for Filipinos because it helps us be able to continue to promote our own skills at the global stage.
Miguel, I'm wondering, for when you say freelancers, do you define it as a person that gets most or all of its income freelance? Or is it also some people that have normal day jobs and do some things on the side? How do you distinguish between these two? Are they professional freelancers, or is anyone with a side hustle considered a freelancer?
That's a really great question. I think that freelancing can be kind of perceived as just purely gig work or purely short term. But in fact, we have seen many freelancers take it to the next level, right? First, there are those that are freelancing full time. Then there are those who have ultimately become businesses. And when we think about where the freelance jobs or gigs come from, I think this is also evolving. So there are global marketplace platforms like Upwork and Fiverr and online jobs that kind of provide a list of gigs and freelance jobs that freelancers can apply to. But then increasingly, you're also seeing Filipinos connect directly with international clients. They're finding their clients through platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn, and then starting to build their own brand and build their own company online.
But which are the top source markets here in terms of country?
I think that in the Philippines, we serve a lot of small businesses and emerging businesses in the US and in Europe. But increasingly, we're also seeing a lot of clients that have customers in Australia and also increasingly in Southeast Asia. So we're really starting to see a diversification and branching out as these Filipino freelancers are able to take their services international.
Miguel, tell us about the partnership with GCash. How easy is it to get on the platform, use Payoneer, earn in dollars, especially now where the dollar is pretty strong? How does that work in terms of, can I have different currencies in my account and then get it in peso? How seamless is that?
This is one of the things that we're really excited about. Our partnership with GCash has really enabled us to further empower Filipino freelancers to take control of their finances. What we've done is create a direct integration between Payoneer and GCash so that from within the GCash app, you can actually view the balances that you have in different currencies on your Payoneer account. You can then link it and then ultimately transfer funds in a different currency to pesos in real time. Now, I think this is really, really innovative because what this means is that you can then choose when you want to transact and then ultimately be able to receive it in real time. And that power really allows you to be able to access your funds faster and then ultimately spend locally. So we're continuing to do a lot with GCash, and we look forward to the ongoing partnership that we have with them.
Of course, we're seeing the peso now at a new, it's
low.
weak as yet, at least, of course. How do you think is that going to further accelerate the freelancing economy? And how do you see that as well pushing your numbers here in terms of number of clients using the platform?
That definitely could be a tailwind for Filipinos, right? One of the things that we are in fact seeing is that Filipinos are able to continue to grow their businesses, hire others, and the strength of the peso could potentially mean that they could use it to be able to do more with the money that they have. It could also attract others to freelancing. As you see, freelancing could potentially be very lucrative. In a recent report that we released with GCash, you do see that freelancers with both local and international clients can earn up to $22 an hour, depending on what they do. And that definitely is a strong motivation to be able to not only get into freelancing, but to succeed and flourish in this field.
And Miguel, finally, give us the numbers here. How many people are using the platform and what are your targets here? What is the amount of freelance percentage, in terms of workers here in the Philippines that is ripe for the picking?
That's a really good question. I think that here in the Philippines, we estimate that there are over 1.5 million Filipino freelancers. Of course, they are various stages. Some are just starting out. Some have been established freelancers for a long time. We see continued growth and a real cause for optimism, primarily because, as I mentioned earlier, right, the trend that we're really seeing is not just a diversification of freelancing from, one type of service provided to a much broader spectrum of offerings, including content, but also the fact that they are going from, being a freelancer on a marketplace, on a short-term gig, to ultimately connecting directly with international clients in a more B2B flow. And in fact, this is something which Payoneer is seeing as part of our growing business is the strength of B2B, and it's growing very meaningfully year on year.
All right, exciting times. Very interesting indeed, taking advantage as well of that Forex hedge there. Thank you so much, Miguel Warren, Regional Vice President for Southeast Asia of Payoneer.
Thank you.
Now let's pause for a quick break, but coming right up after that. President Bongbong Marcos is set to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly session in New York.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
You're still watching Businessworld Live here on One News. I'm Delos Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. Now, the palace has announced that President Bongbong Marcos is set to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden for the first time on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly.
Now, the highly anticipated meeting, described by Malacanang as a momentous event, is scheduled on September 22, 7 p.m. New York time or 7 a.m. on September 23, Manila time. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles says the two leaders are expected to discuss the Philippines and the United States' 76 years of alliance in terms of mutual cooperation, two-way trade, direct investments, and other issues.
Late last night, Philippine time, President Marcos also got the chance to meet with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, also on the sidelines of the UNGA. The two leaders discussed developments in bilateral relations between the Philippines and Japan, with Kishida reiterating Japan's commitment to supporting the Philippines' economic development to become an upper-middle-income country. The president also met with executives of Cargill, that is a food corporation that has operations in the Philippines.
The Agriculture Department expects supply of meat, fish, and other goods to remain sufficient for the holidays. The agency says production is expected to be enough to meet high demand towards the end of the year. The DA says the National Food Authority will also ensure that there will be adequate rice supply on the market by managing buffer stock. Though supply remains sufficient, some Noche Buena items have begun to increase in supermarkets, according to the Trade Department. Price increases of these items range from 5 pesos to 56 pesos depending on the product. Pork prices have also climbed by 10 to 20 pesos per kilo in some supermarkets in Metro Manila. With this, the Trade Department reiterates its call for consumers to begin shopping for Noche Buena items as early as now.
Hanggat maaga pa bago lahat magtaasan ng presyo yan, makabili na tayo kung kaya natin. Kahit pa isa-isa, hanggang maipon natin, makumpleto natin yung Noche Buena na ihahain natin. By observation din, nag-i-increase ng presyo yan towards October, November. Pataas ng pataas ang demand, pataas ng pataas din ang presyo.
The Chinese embassy says it is open to working with the Philippine government to crack down on crimes related to offshore gaming operations or POGOs. The embassy says Chinese ambassador to the Philippines Huang Xilian exchanged views with Justice Secretary Boying Remulla on strengthening law enforcement cooperation between the two countries. The Chinese embassy says it appreciates the rescue of a number of Chinese citizens and the shutdown of some POGO companies in recent operations. Though Beijing says it is committed to protecting the rights of overseas Chinese citizens, they still welcome the Philippines' initiatives to take strong measures against POGO-related crimes and to tackle its root causes. For their part, China says the Philippines can expect help on deportation, among other issues.
Tech retailer Upson will defer its initial public offering to the first quarter of 2023. The company says its plan to delay its market debut is aligned with the views of its underwriters, First Metro Investment Corporation and RCBC Capital. Upson initially said it is targeting to list on October 14, with public offers set from October 3 to 7. The company will offer 888 million common shares at 5 pesos and 50 centavos apiece, with over 98 million shares as an over-allotment option. The Securities and Exchange Commission approved the tech retailer's 4.34 billion peso IPO earlier this month.
Australian energy firm SacGasCo is targeting new offshore oil developments here in the Philippines. That is according to the Department of Trade and Industry. The DTI says SacGasCo, locally operating as Nido Petroleum, has set its eyes on performing a well test on the revitalization of the Cadlao oil field. The oil field is located in the Palawan Basin near the Malampaya gas field. SacGasCo is aiming to get a drilling rig in early 2023. The Trade Department says this will be followed by another plan to drill the Nandino prospect that is also offshore Palawan. According to the DTI, initial investments for the two oil projects are at $15 million each.
And those are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front today. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. We are One News, all sides, all the time. Don't go away. We'll give you the latest on the local bourse when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
And we're still watching Business World Live here on One News. Now, Dan, yesterday, what a day. First time we ever saw the peso at its weakest at 58. Where do we go from here? It doesn't seem to be looking bright here.
It is a stairway to heaven, Jess. And I mean, look at that, 58 spot 355. Did you ever imagine that ever happening? You know, during the war, it was 2 pesos to a dollar. Nevertheless, a lot of weakening here, of course, on the back of the Fed delivering that 75 basis point rate hike, which was as expected. But what was more worrying to people was the fact that the tone was even more hawkish by Powell, saying there will be more pain ahead. Some are looking at 4.6%, some are looking at 5%. Imagine putting your money in US Treasury and it might be 5% return by the end of the year. So there's a lot of questions about that. Nevertheless, when you look at the BSP and what they're going to be doing later on, we did see some strands here coming from BSP Governor Medalla, who's speaking right now. He does say that their goal is to keep the inflation at target levels here, and of course he did mention, I will never talk about what level of the peso is comfortable or not. So a lot of questions on what the BSP is going to be doing. Nevertheless, if you take a look at how painful it's affecting our bourse here, we are at 6,200 levels, just it's down 3% in just the past 3 days. This on the back, of course, the S&P 500 down 20% since January. Asian stocks all across the board were sold off at the morning session, and take a look at which ones are really feeling the pinch. Everybody from Converge, all the way to Ayala Corporation and BPI, only 2 sitting out the sell-off, PLDT and Semirara, Jess. And finally, speaking of telcos, just a quick peek on those. This, as Macquarie is said, and these are according to sources not confirmed, that they are nearing a deal with Globe to buy 1,350 towers that could be worth $400 million. So no comment at this time, but nevertheless, all of the telcos feeling the same pinch as as everybody else as we await the BSP decision later on.
Okay, today turning out to be as gloomy as the weather, and that's it for today, September 22, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Delos Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.